All right, well, we've been reporting from the 16 Corps area. I'm presently at the 16 Corps headquarters in Nagrota, and just days ahead of the visit of the Pakistani National Security Advisor to India, I can tell you there is a great deal of tension on the line of control. And as the Corps Commander was mentioning, if you go back and you look at past history, then you will know that this is a trend of an escalation in cross-border firing and shelling. It's happened in the past as well whenever something big between India and Pakistan comes up. Joining us now to debate whether anything substantive can actually emerge on these talks, whether it's a good time for these talks to take place. I'm joined by Lieutenant General B.S. Jaswal, the former Northern Army Commander, former Secretary to the External Affairs Ministry, Ambassador K.C. Singh from the BJP, Nalin Kohli from the Congress Party, Manish Tiwari, and in a few moments we'll be joined by Admiral Javed Iqbal, the former Ambassador and Defence Analyst. He joins us from Pakistan. Let me come to you first, Manish Tiwari. Given the fact that we've got so much tension now on the line of control and the international border between India and Pakistan, do you feel this is an inopportune time for NSA-level talks to take place?
Absolutely, Vishnu. That's a no-brainer. You do not require any rocket science to figure it out. Is this the kind of environment in which NSA-level talks should be conducted? And the fundamental problem is that this government does not know what do they want about the National Security Advisor level talks. You know, do we want textiles from Pakistan? Do we want sugar from Pakistan? Do we want trade and transit rights from Pakistan? Do we want a most favored nation status from Pakistan? And the answer is no. The only one thing that we want is that terror from Pakistan should abate. And rather than terror abating, ever since the UFA process unraveled itself, you've had the Gurdaspur Fidain attack, you've had the arrest of this militant in Udhampur, you have had continuous firing across the line of control and the international border. And of course, then there is the paradigm of the BJP completely doing a 180-degree turn on its position that terror and talks cannot go hand in hand, and now agreeing to talk about terror. So therefore, on both these constructs, A, the environment, and the complete flip-flop in the position, okay, I think there should absolutely be no confusion or no ambiguity in anybody's mind. These National Security Advisor level talks need to be immediately called off.
Okay. Talks need to be called off, says the Congress Party. Nalin, there is a great deal of tension. There is no doubt about it. Civilians are dying on our side as well. What can we realistically achieve from these talks? Because we keep talking to them and this scenario gets repeated over and over. There was so much optimism at UFA, but then we've seen Gurdaspur, Udhampur, all these ceasefire violations.
Well, I think the first thing you need to acknowledge, I'll ignore what Mr. Tiwari has to say, because the confusion that he keeps referring to could also be stemming from the fact that they have confused leadership in their party. But let's move for a second beyond the Congress-BJP diatribe, which we'll have ample opportunity for later in the program. The path with any relationship with Pakistan is not going to be a rosy path, and therefore we need to acknowledge this is something that's going to happen on a daily basis. It has happened. The question is, what does Government of India do when these situations are there? So has the Government of India been sitting? Now Mr. Tiwari obviously refers back to the BJP when his party was in power. The question is that during that period, what did the Government of India do on a host of things? Right from the economy, right from corruption, right from scams, right up to the Pakistan question.
No, Nalin, let's focus on the immediate.
Let me finish. I'm coming only on Pakistan, Vishnu. I'm asking only the indulgence of me being able to make a point, given the political statement that Mr. Tiwari has made. So now coming to the NSA talks, certainly calling off talks or not having talks is an option that every government has. And from time to time, every government has exercised it. The Government of India exercised it pretty early. When we had the Hurriyat question, when Pakistan chose to invite the Hurriyat leaders for consultations, and we certainly didn't approve of that, and we put our point across. Now, whether that is to be exercised or not, comes in the sovereign domain. Whether we would go, so therefore, I don't see any reason at the moment for Government of India to take that advice from the Congress Party. Yes, the border is stressed, but have we given a befitting reply? Expert after expert is there, and that's not a political domain.
No, but sir, that's just the point.
After expert says that Government of India's response has changed
given
since
on the
May
line
2014.
Of control, they keep firing, and yet we talk about peace. So it's a bit confused. But let's see what happens. I mean, let's see what happens. We're also joined by Admiral Javed Iqbal, the former ambassador and defense analyst. He joins us from Pakistan. Before I go across to him, I'd like to go across to Ambassador K.C. Singh. Ambassador, on the ground over here, it's an extremely tense scenario. And I'll tell you one aspect of this which is particularly frightening. They're using 120 millimeter mortars. In our categorization, this actually comes in the grade of artillery. Not only has there been a violation of the ceasefire agreement between the two sides, there is a further violation of the original ceasefire agreement between the two sides, with Pakistan escalating to the use of a weapon system which has 2.5 times effectiveness and killing capacity than the 81 millimeter mortars we are using. They have stepped up the scenario over here. Doesn't that represent a fundamental threat, or shouldn't it, to the process of talks coming up a few days later?
Thank you, Vishnu. I heard your excellent interview with the General in charge of 16 Corps when you were discussing all this. Now, essentially, since the UFA meeting addressed two issues. One was how to maintain the sanctity of the ceasefire, and therefore they said the DGMOs will meet and the senior officers of BSF and their counterparts will meet. And second was the NSAs were supposed to meet and take up the issue of previous terrorist acts 2611 and how to ensure that other acts don't take place. Now, ever since UFA ended, Pakistan military has escalated the attacks. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that the military is questioning whatever understanding was arrived at UFA, whatever is available to us in the public space in that statement which was issued. Now today the Chief of Army Staff has met the Pakistani Prime Minister. He will of course say it's India that is provoking. But very clearly the mechanism that the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Pakistan arrived at in UFA, which is that the DGMOs meet and quickly stop any violations instead of escalation, is not only not working, but it's actually getting escalated, as you mentioned. And secondly, we've got these intrusions in Gurdaspur, and now we got a terrorist, what is called Kasab 2. Now the difficulty is that when we get somebody like this Navid character, Pakistan reacts in the same manner that they reacted after 2611. By now they should have been acknowledging it. They should have been basically saying we've been to those camps. They should have picked up other people who were his collaborators who pushed him across. We don't hear a thing out of Pakistan. Instead, what we are hearing is they're preparing their dossier.
Ambassador, that's a very important point, Ambassador.
Yeah.
And I just want to bring that across to Admiral Javed Iqbal. Sure. Admiral Javed Iqbal, sir, this is a fact. We hardly see a reaction in Pakistan to the capture of a man we call Kasab 2. Navid is his name. He's being interrogated. He's a Lashkar terrorist. He's trained by the Lashkar. He has a home in Faisalabad. When journalists went over there, the army and police forces had surrounded the home. There is no doubt, sir, that he's Pakistani. Why isn't there some more of a process or an effort from Pakistan to say, yes, we are trying to resolve this particular case?
Well, I think you are only focusing on one issue. If yesterday the Punjab Home Minister was murdered and the Punjab is having 3 days of mourning, who did it? Kasab 3, Kasab 4, Kasab 5? So I think your vision at the country level is very poor. I think the two Prime Ministers, if they have a vision, you lower it down to that level that nothing can go ahead. I think the only thing...
Sir, nothing could be sadder than the loss of lives on either side of the border. All one is trying to say is that there has to be an admission in Pakistan that there are no two faces of terror. One that is acceptable terror and one that is unacceptable terror. That's the point that India has been trying to make, sir.
No, I think the courtesy is that you allow me to complete, then you talk. But the problem is that whatever is not palatable to you, you interrupt. I am saying that the only thing, the major issue between the two countries is lack of deficit of trust. And unless that level comes up, all these things will not help anything. Now, what is the other option? Other option is going to war. We have gone to war 3 times. You want to go 4 times? Well, go ahead, fine. Because here also there are fools who are ready to, exercise that option. But is that the option we should work for? I think the primary, talks, if they are holding talks, is because that how to bring the temperature down. And in spite of all these happening, we must focus ourselves on the higher issues, on the bigger issues, on the bigger objective. So I am disappointed when the talk shows, they relegate themselves to such things.
Admiral, before that, let me go across to General Jaswal. General, how does one anywhere in the country reconcile what is happening now over here on the IB and the LOC with this process of talks at a completely different level? On the ground, our soldiers are fighting. That's their instruction. They fire, we fire back. But how does one reconcile this entire process? Are you optimistic that de-escalation can actually take place when Sartaj Aziz comes to India?
Well, you have to look at it from the strategic point of view first as to why this is happening. But I'm sorry to say I take umbrage to the statement of Admiral Javed to say that your country, he's blaming India by saying your country, your thinking is very poor. Admiral Javed, you're a soldier, I'm a soldier. We don't give such pointed statements. Nevertheless,
no,
firstly, it was Pakistan in UFA who had put in a word that we must have our NSA-level meeting. Their request was from their side. We have accepted and we've invited. Now, Pakistan cannot withdraw from that. And if in case we call off the talks strategically in the world community, it will be understood that, sorry, Pakistan was keen to have talks, but India is a spoiler. So this is the strategic issue. Now, as far as the escalation on this is concerned, on the border, very rightly by Ambassador K.C. Singh, he has said the military is not very happy because in the joint statement, if you go back to UFA, the Foreign Secretary's statement, there was no mention of Kashmir. Sartaj Aziz, when he comes to Pakistan, probably is told by the army that now you include this question, that there will be no talks without Kashmir. So army is definitely wanting to remain relevant on the Indian border, and they will keep hyping up these kind of cross-border violations. You see, this is a set pattern. It is never, I've never seen any talk going on when there has not been a hype on the borders. But notwithstanding, whether in this case, this particular case, whether the escalation still continues or not, we have our reputation at stake, that we are not the spoilers of peace. I always believe, I used to believe, that there can be no inertia in diplomacy. But in this case, what I find, that if Pakistan is not behaving, we need not talk at the NSA level. Let the DGMO level talk and thereafter create a stage.
In fact, let me just ask Admiral Javed Iqbal that question. Admiral, let me ask you this. Sir, and this is a pattern we've seen many years in the past, that whenever there is an India-Pakistan summit, a meeting of our foreign secretaries, foreign ministers, or in this case our NSAs, there is a stepping up of violence across the line of control. Pakistan resorts to firing. And the sense over here, sir, in India, is that while your political leadership seeks to engage ours to try and diffuse the situation, your army is thinking something completely different. That your army and your political leadership still, sir, in 2015 do not see eye to eye.
Well, I think first of all, I must talk to General Jaswal. I didn't mean that. I mean on the either side. I don't think this is those spoiler are on the, in my view.
Point taken. Point taken.
Right. Okay.
Point taken.
Now,
Point
now, let me tell you one thing. The thing is that you always consider that Pakistan public and Pakistan establishment, I mean, I specifically quote army, they are not on the same page, or they are different. In Pakistan, I can assure you, whether you like it or you don't like it, you must take it. This will remain forever like this. Pakistan, public and military, they are like, you see, I say you cannot take away the nail from the meat. it is like this, that they are all together, they are the same. So your attitude is always you are trying to put the difference between army and public. And let me tell you, even your language, for example, you say they do not behave. You consider Pakistan as a client state like Nepal, Bhutan. We consider ourselves equal. So unless these issues are mentally acceptable to each other, nothing will happen. I am sorry, I am for the peace of the subcontinent. I consider that the army's role is not that to consider, to do the foreign policies. And I think that with the passage of time, we have, but the thing is that you can blame us for that. But the reality is that in Pakistan, army, even today, Raheel Sharif's, height is much greater than the Prime Minister. And you are sitting next door. Can't you make out that? Then if you can make out that, then you must understand that this is the country which have, who have this pattern, who have this thinking, who this is attitude. And then if you decide to talk, then you must take those things, in consideration. Otherwise, keep on, blaming each other.
No, but that's just the point, Admiral. That's just the point, sir. You talk about General Raheel Sharif, and the point, that's exactly the point. Who should India be speaking to? I think Ambassador KC Singh wanted to come in, sir. Go ahead, Ambassador KC Singh.
No, but can you take the answer for that?
In fact, Manish wants to come in. Manish, go ahead.
Vishnu, that's precisely the problem, that General Raheel Sharif's stature in Pakistan is higher than the stature of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And the defense establishment has a veto on the India policy in Pakistan as well as the Afghanistan policy. And that's why if you go back to the UFA process, even before the ink had dried on the joint statement, you had Sartaj Aziz, the National Security Advisor, and who's going to be Mr. Doval's interlocutor, standing up and literally rubbishing the UFA process. Then you had Pakistan's finance minister standing up in the Senate and repeating virtually the same thing. Then you had the Fedayeen attack in Gurdaspur, Udhampur, and the cross-border firing. So therefore, that is the fundamental reality, that the guys you are talking to in Pakistan actually have no say insofar as Pakistan's India policy is concerned. So therefore, even if the NSAs talk, there is nothing which is going to come out of it, because ultimately it is the armed forces establishment and the army which will decide as to whether the cross-border firing has to continue, whether terrorists have to be infiltrated into India, or India has to be bled with 1,000 cuts. Is this the environment that we are supposed to talk to Pakistan in? I'm afraid no.